How's it going, everyone? Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Phil Talk Sports Podcast. It's been a while since the last episode, been even longer since we weren't reviewing a movie, but I promise this one will be worth the wait. Phil Nunziata, Nick Rice with me, as he often is. There are plenty of things to talk about in sports right now, Nick. We have baseball's in full swing. The college baseball playoffs is going on, which I've really been enjoying. The WNBA and Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. A lot of good stuff, and that's not even talking about what's coming up with like the big three and everything, NBA free agency, NBA finals, plenty of great stuff to talk about. But we're not talking about any of that today. We're talking about the one thing that matters to us right now, and that is the thing that drops in 40-something days, depending on if you're getting early release and when you're listening to this. But today is going to be nothing but talk about college football 25, the video game that drops July 19th or July 16th, depending on if you are getting the early access. And we meant to do this a little while ago. I'm glad we waited because we got a little bit more information since then. But we're going to dive right into it. This is the most anticipated game probably of my lifetime. Like, there's stuff I've been really excited about, but there isn't many games that I've gone 11 years without a new one when you knew that there should have been. So this is really uncharted territory for everybody, I think.
Yeah, thanks for having me on this podcast for this breaking news, this very important update of college football 25. You know, if we're going to talk about a video game on this podcast, we're going to dive into this. You know, the game is either really good or really bad. And we haven't talked about video games in a long time. And there's a lot of room for that. So, you know, this game's going to be, at least in our eyes, pretty good.
So the other thing, too, that's important to remember with like, we keep using the term breaking news. Really, there are YouTubers out there that are making these videos as soon as they come out. So we're not really going to be discussing anything new to the people that are following the story, but as avid fans and players of this series, I mean, my resume for this is behind me, where the football is behind the jersey. That is every disc year of NCAA football that was ever made. And then there's also the baseball games and the basketball games. And when it was still on cartridges, I have those too. So I have played every version of this game that's ever been out. Nick shouldn't be too far behind me. And the amount of hours played has got to be pretty even overall. So I think we're pretty qualified to talk about NCAA 14 and its legacy and the fact that it kept people playing for, out of this 11-year span, probably 7-8 years. And then Revamped came along and was really a shot in the arm that we've been playing now for the past 2 or 3 years. So shout out to those guys. Some of those guys are actually working on this game. So that alone will tell you some of the people and the attention to detail that we should be having in stuff like this. But this game has not always been perfect. As much as we like it, there has always been things that you maybe liked or didn't like. So if we mention stuff that we didn't like or maybe don't like in this new one, that doesn't mean we're a hater. We're just really looking at this with the most wide spectrum as possible.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, you know, I may need to check out the college basketball stuff because it's been a long time. And part of what made that series so awesome was the CBS presentation. And I guess that can get into the first kind of bit of nuance of this new game about how, according to them, there's nothing involving ESPN or any other network that's going to be referenced in this game. But from first look at the scoreboard, to be honest, I don't think we're missing much. That scoreboard brings a lot of amazing features to it. I think it looks really nice.
So I'm going to call this version, this half of the podcast, the "Is it the big deal? Is it a big deal?" segment. And we're going to start with the ESPN thing, and we will discuss, is this a true hindrance or is it just different than we're used to? And we'll talk about the ESPN thing. You mentioned we now have seen the score bug. We've seen somewhere between gameplay and cinematics, like we've seen a play or two. We don't know what it looks like in full congruent motion, but we have seen the score bug. As you mentioned, there is no ESPN presence. There is no college game day. While I think not having college game day is a slight negative, the fact that it's not ESPN labeled like it all used to be, ESPN changes all the time. This could be outdated by the time it comes out. So the fact that they don't have to focus on matching ESPN's presentation, they can just have the best presentation that they can come up with. And it looks really similar to like the NBC score bug. Like they clearly pulled from things they've seen. So it's not this totally, I like that you can see the logos of the teams. It's not just the names like it was, you know, in the early 2000s, like, or late 2010s when we were playing this game. I think there's more to it. The records are there. You can see it has the name and then like the mascot of the. So all the information you want is there on the scorebook. But in general, aside from the name not being attached to it, do you think it's a big deal that ESPN isn't like front and center in this game?
Um, I'm gonna have an interesting take on this. All
Okay.
right, and I'm gonna say yes because it has nothing to do with the college football game. It has to do with Madden. I'm starting to see just because this is to me a great test that I'm starting to see just how many fingers the NFL has on Madden and
Hmm.
the fact that this feels like the first time in over a decade where there is a lot of presentation creativity, where it feels like these developers, I don't feel like they're the only ones of the last decade that had passion, that wanted to create something interesting. I think that these guys have their hands behind their back, and I think this game is showing it.
Hmm.
Where 1 year in, it looks very interesting in ways that I've not seen in Madden. I think it's a big deal because it shows the NFL, who has had a lot of say so on a lot of different things getting removed from the game. I think this game is proving that that is correct, that that's true.
Yeah, because like with the NFL, like the reason there's no tackles where helmets come off, there's no career-ending injuries in the game, like that is because the NFL themselves have said we don't want this. There is not a body in college football that can say we don't want this, so they don't have. They have discourse with maybe the conferences and whoever, but there's not a individual discourse like that, so they can't pull things because they have no one to have that conversation with. The other
Yeah.
thing that's important with this, ESPN would be cool, but college football was on more stations than just ESPN. Like it's on Fox, it's on NBC. So if you side with one of them, you're now saying, well, we can't bring up the other ones at all. In a crazy world that ESPN doesn't want this, if Fox jumped in and you don't have college game day, but you have big noon kickoff, if we have that in 2026 or whatever, that would be a huge deal. But for now, they could do even next year's game, which it's crazy to already be talking about that. Like they could have a game day like cutscene that just doesn't say college game day. Like it's that simple. So if after this year, like we like this about the game, we don't like this about the game, but man, it really felt hollow that we didn't have that big deal. If they see that, they can be like, all right, well, now we have to have college football Saturday 26 or whatever they want to call it, and you can get it in the game without the name. I mean, the basketball games never had the names March Madness. They just called it the NCAA tournament, and they figured out how to make that work because they had the presentation of CBS and everything else. So it's like there's a way around it, but for the first year back, I agree that that's not what I would have focused on either.
Yeah, I don't know how much of it, and I guess we'll find out in the next year, in terms of things not in the game, came down to this project took longer than we thought. That's why
Yeah.
we had to delay the game once because it was
Right.
anticipated to come out last year. And then how much of it is, man, we knew that it'd take this amount of time, but then all of a sudden the players didn't want to accept a certain deal. So that delayed things. Maybe
Right.
schools didn't want to send their information. And what we'll get to as well, about the trophies and how many of them didn't want to be in the game. All that took extra
Hmm.
negotiating and extra logistics. So it'll be interesting to see what happens next year. But for the meanwhile, I mean, I'd say for the first time in a long time, not everybody, obviously, but a lot of people are trusting the process that we haven't trusted in a long time.
Right. We are putting blind faith into EA, and I fully admit that more than we probably ever have before. And that is because like you are at least giving us what we want in theory. We are going to hold out. Nobody was happy when it got delayed, but they understood why. And the other thing is this is the foundation of a brand new game. That's why it took 3 years to make and not the normal 10-month cycle between Maddens, right? So it's always going to take longer to build that. Now that this foundation is here, as long as it's good, it makes sense why next year's game will only take, 10, 11 months to make because the foundation has been set. All the stadiums have been renders. The players are in there. You're just changing what the players look like. All that is going to be that much easier to do once it's like it's if you make a document at work that you have to use all the time. Once you've made the template, you're just plugging in the new information. So stuff like that, I think it's going to be that much easier. Next year, we're going to know what we're looking at. It's just what are the little tweaks going to be, and that is where Madden fell into the it's the same game every year. Which we'll talk reskin stuff now. Anything that people have said And again, we're putting blind confidence into EA. I'm allowing myself to do that for one cycle because they deserve the credit for at least attempting this. But the first time there was any sort of clip at all, people are like, looks just like Madden. It's like, my guy, it's still football. It's gonna look like Madden. No one ever minded how Madden looked. They mind how Madden played. So when that first trailer came out and it looked amazing, and you had Pitt doing the dunk, and you had Alabama with the turnover belt, everything looked fantastic. So did it look like Madden? Sure, because it looks like a football game on the PS5. So
Yeah.
I think I'll just say I don't care if it looks like Madden. We just don't want it to play like Madden.
I actually am even going to go a step farther. I think that I mind a little bit if it looks like Madden in the sense
Mhm.
that I don't know about other people, but I think from the lighting to some of the presentation, I even felt like Madden kind of left a lot there.
Right.
I think the old Maddens kind of did a better job of that, focused more on it. And from the look of the trailer and the gameplay, the limited amount that we have and stuff like that, I think they spent a lot of effort. And I think I'm just like you. This feels like a game where from college football 26,
Hmm.
if they really, really care about fan insight and about doing the best they can, I think by next year they could kind of perfect some of these things and some of these bugs. Because what is getting released right now are fans going, college football, even though the game's been in production and we're just grateful to have it back, like either the end zone tape is backwards or they have little
Yeah.
like North Texas, they didn't add the extra deck for
Right.
the crowd. So
And
there
a
were
lot
a
of that
few
stuff, they are
mistakes there.
saying that they have time to fix that. So they're being
Yeah.
really receptive to all that, which is good. Like the Texas State thing without the deck, like that's important. You're literally missing half their stadium. With
Yeah.
the Red River rivalry, which is always hard to say, with Texas and Oklahoma, they had the end zones backwards. That game's played every year. That's probably something you should get right. It's one thing if it
Yeah.
was the Florida Georgia game and they don't have a specific end zone, then all right, whatever side it's on, it's on. So like
Mhm.
when it's obvious to fix something and they fix it, cool. Like that's always I think gonna be worth it. I guess what I'm trying to say with the I don't care if it looks like Madden, there's an extreme to that. Like we've all seen, I think it's Madden 22. They really went hard on, and they did the college mod. I've never pulled it off. It's a little out of my pay grade. I'm decent with tech, but not enough to pull that off for whatever reason. That is literally Madden with college uniforms. Nobody wanted that. But when I mean
Yeah.
when they're on the field and stuff, like it's gonna look very familiar. It's gonna look like college football upgrade. It's gonna look like Madden with different uniform. It's still a football game. For example, I know you're not a big soccer guy, Nick, but EA lost the rights to FIFA. It's now called EAFC. Moving forward is the name of the
Oh.
soccer game, right? 2K this past week, little video game news, has bought the rights to FIFA. So there's now going to be EAFC 25 and FIFA 2K25. Those games are going to look similar. The graphic stylings are going to feel different, but like it's still going to be basketball players. It's still going to be soccer players. It's still going to be football players. So I'm not as worried. I don't know what anybody saw from these trailers that didn't think it was going to look exactly like what we looked like. So that part I'm okay. But so the Madden reskin talk really should stop at this point. Unless the second you get the game and there's like little glitches that your guy runs out and he's wearing a Buccaneer uniform instead, like you can tell they just slapped it over Madden coding. Other than that, it's clearly not a reskin. I think that conversation needs to die a death at this point.
Yeah, from the neck rolls that just the little parts of the play trailer you'd see to the one-legged sideline catch
Yeah.
to the perfectly placed lob pass into the end zone. There's like several things there where I love because it shows they really tried and they're not shoving it in your face
Yeah.
for lack of a better word. When Madden would add these trailers like, "Hey, we're going to add superstar traits." And that's literally the mantra of the whole year versus
Yeah.
college football's trailer where it's like, oh my gosh, did you see the dunk, the pit dunk? It was like a
Right.
1 second clip that they had they didn't even advertise. Like, I love the fact that they're doing that. It shows there's a lot of detail here and it's about the realism of the game. We're not just putting some gimmick in your face all year.
Yeah. The thing that, like, I don't know that I shouldn't have expected it, but when I saw Alabama with the turnover belt, like, that's become a big thing in college football. I did not think we would see that. And I hope if you make a team that you can have a turnover item, whether it be a sword or a whatever, everyone's got something different. That was a surprise to me. So they are.
Was that in 14? I don't think
I
so.
don't know.
I
Nothing.
don't
There
think
might have
any of
been.
these were.
There may have been a cutscene like after a turnover, but back then also I don't think anyone had like a specific item like that.
Yeah.
Like some teams have. Miami started it with the chain, right, and then UNLV you go over and you hit the slot machine. Certain teams have different things. So like I don't think that was even a thing back 11 years ago. So that could have a lot to do with that as well. Um, to me, the biggest thing that's not in the game, I'm not saying this, I'm not saying if it's a big deal or if it's the biggest deal, but it seemed to have garnered the most conversation. We're going to talk about Road to Glory now for a second, that you will not start in high school. And this pissed a
Yeah.
lot of people off. And I'll admit that when I saw that, my immediate response was disappointment. But after like 10 minutes, I realized the waves of these games from back in the day, again, I've played them all, 12, 13, and 14 had high school like that. 9, 10, and 11 had you start in the high school playoff. You don't play the regular season. But prior to that, you went to like a camp and you played all the mini games, and how you did in the mini games determined your star rating, and then you picked your thing. So there's kind of this miscommunication that high school's always been in it. Would I have liked to see it? Yes, but we've played Road to Glory enough times that you kind of got over it after a while. Like you were simming through those games. It wasn't a perfect concept. Like if you wanted to play it, back in those games, UCF or San Diego State, because they were 2 to 3 star programs in 14. That's not a dig on either program. That's just a fact of the game. If you had 2 good games in high school, you got the scholarship you wanted, so you didn't really care about playing the rest of it. So the high school was never perfect. It was a really neat novelty that I do hope comes back, but I'm going to label this one not a big deal because at the end of the day, you get to pick your star rating, and then your couple things will fluctuate based on, I think, a questionnaire, according to Matt Brown. So like you're still, every player you create is going to be different, and that's what I'm more interested in. Like I already have I have a whole. You can only be the 5 positions. There's no D line as of yet. They may have just nobody picked it, so nobody thought to include it. But I have like a player in mind for every position I could possibly do, and all those guys are going to feel different because I'm going to answer the questions the way that character would, because they're all pulled from football movies. My list. Maybe I'll show that either later today or at the next one we do these. So like I'm going to answer the questions the way that character would answer the questions. So they're all going to be different. So as long as every time you boot up Road to Glory for a new character and the journey is at least a bit different, that's all I care about. So would high school have been nice? Yes. I like the fact that you could, if you created your high school in Team Builder in 14 and you wanted to use that uniform in the high school, you were allowed to, which was like to me the coolest function of 14. So that I'll miss. But overall, I don't think it's a huge deal that there's no high school. Because after you play it once, you're not really concerned about it.
Yeah. So, I remember back in, I think it was Madden 15 or 16, we might have even had a brief segment talking about this. I'm getting the feeling that we did all these years ago. If you remember it was the black and white friend in the dynasty mode in Madden where
The long shot?
yeah, long
Yeah.
shot where you're this, quarterback in Texas or whatever, and you
Right, yeah.
play catch with your kid.
Mhm.
And we were saying this feels scripted and weird, but there's elements here that we really like because
Yeah.
it did feel like a movie and it felt fun. It was long, but it felt fun.
Right.
And if College Football 25 develops on their dynasty, kind of like how the Madden refused to, I think you could end up in a couple years having a really good game.
Yeah.
Kind of like you said, if fans expected to come in and going, the first edition of the game is going to be this incredible finished deep product, I think we're all fooling ourselves. That's what makes me excited for the next couple of years because I would be shocked if in a couple of years we don't have a college game day type show or a deeper dynasty mode. But in year one, what we have to be really excited about, what we haven't seen in a long time, is that these Road to Glories, they say that the story is not scripted. So you could play yourself out of college football if you really wanted to. And I think that's going to be really exciting. I'm sure a couple of YouTubers are going to go in there and say, let me go ahead and run back for a safety about 20 times and then see what happens. So
and
that's
your
really exciting.
grades matter. You could be academically ineligible in this game,
Right,
which you
that's
used to
another
do,
one.
and was possible in the PS2 era as well. So, like, not who is it? Not the expert. I can't wait for his episode where I'm gonna see how bad my grades can be and still play. Like he's gonna be the type of guy to test that, and I can't wait to see it.
Yeah.
So the other thing with with the Road to Glory the way it is. Like, I love Dynasty, but I am kind of a story-driven person, so I do enjoy making those. That I've made so many characters in the past, either just out of my own head or, like I said, I'll pull them from a movie, or like on MLB The Show. I love the movie Mr. 3000 with Bernie Mac, and it was Stan Ross in that. I made Stan Ross Jr. and I put him on the White Sox because Stan Ross Sr. is from Chicago. So like I just like taking stories like that and running with it. So that's something I'd want to do with this. And again, I already have a list. So as long as you can make it interesting the way you want it to be, I think it's fine. The long shot that you were talking about, I remember at one point they were just playing like in the park and there was like a 2-hand tag version.
Yeah.
And I'm like, granted, they missed a lot of marks on long shot, but I'm like, this kind of feels like it should. Like nobody's ever going to make a 2-hand touch football game, but if they did, this is how it would play. So like they got some things right in that. And then FIFA had the Journey, which was very similar. You had two best friends that fall out and you can control both of their, like very similar idea. They probably got it a little bit better, but I think it's a little easier to do it in soccer than football. So this stuff's been done before. Somebody did after all the guys went to Orlando and we got all the information we got back, somebody poorly reported that Road to Glory was like a 15 to 20 hour story. So everybody's like, oh no, it's story mode. It's long shot all over again. We're done for. And me and you broke it down in the group chat. I'm like, well, when you're only playing one side of the ball, a game only takes 20 minutes, maybe if you're the running back or you're the linebacker, like whatever. So when you really add all that up,
for me, 30,
it's about 10 to 20 hours like that for 4 years of that, it's about 10 to 20 hours. So it's like they were right, but the way that was reported was weird. So I think we're safe in assuming that, no, there's no story that you're always going to end up in the same place either way. So I think we're safe with Road to Glory, and I'm very much looking forward to it.
Yeah, what is a little bit of a deal is, as far as I know, this stuff doesn't get imported to Madden 2025 or whatever the game title they're going to have. So that is a bit of a bummer. It'd be nice to go, all right, I worked my 20 hours or so, and then now I move on to the next thing. But
well, actually, I think you have that backwards. The Road to Glory people can be transferred to Madden. It's the draft classes that can't, which is where I was going to go next. So
then there we go.
The fact that your Road to Glory guy can is awesome. But your dynasty modes, you can no longer import the draft classes. So that's our next. Is it a big deal? I think people would have liked that, of course. But I feel like you're still going to be able to manually make them like you do now. The reason this is not the case is if Nick Rice got paid his $600 in a copy of the game to be in College Football 25 and you just got put into Madden through that game, Nick Rice and other people would say, well, you paid me for one game likeness and now I'm in 2 games. So where's my, either double it, which is another 8 million, billion, whatever dollars that they would pay. So that's the reason for those that don't understand. But I'm pretty sure like in past years, people make the draft classes and they put all the right information in and they go to Madden and they're fine. They won't have the face on the roster. But other than that, so out of the two, the exporting roster, draft classes or Road to Glory, I would rather take Road to Glory first off because, I could recreate myself, but if I don't have to, and that exact story carries over. So out of the two, I don't see it as a big deal because as Madden's been, all the things that have been wrong with it in the past couple of years, there's already a built-in way around not having those draft classes imported. So this might be the least deal other than the last thing I have to say, but I don't consider this one as big a deal. Some people would like to it'd be easier to hit import and then hit download. Like I get that would be easier for the average player, but the fact that there's already a way around that, not a huge deal to me.
I mean, somebody's got to do that anyways because Tennessee quarterback number 18 or whatever, it would be the import name into Madden, and you'd have to edit it there. So you might as well just have it all ready to go. So, I think we're good there. So
the only other is it a big deal thing
there's always someone who's not going to be good there. Sorry to cut you off. There's always somebody that's good, but the white majority of us are happy with it.
I will never disallow someone's ability to make a big deal out of nothing. Like it's always a possibility. So there will be people that are not good. The second they get this game, they'll have I'm going to be busy playing it, so I'm not going to be looking at all the hater messages, but like in a week when I finally leave my room again after this game comes out, then I'll peek and see I just had the best week of my life in a long time. So I'm sorry you didn't, but So here's the last big one, and it's big because of the discourse, not because of what it actually means. We are 90% sure, and I'm going to reserve the 10% to EA be like, guess what? It's in the game, is the mascot mode. We have no reason to believe as of right now that there is no mascot mode because no one has
Okay.
reported on it through Orlando, like from
All
the
right.
trip to Orlando. Nobody has said it. And granted, they played an older build. So really all you're doing is slapping the mascot models, which are already made, onto players. So I think that'd be a really good faith thing for EA. Either nobody knows about it till the game drops and it's in there, or a mid-season update adds mascot mode. But we're just going to operate on the assumption that mascot mode is not in the game. As fun as that is, man, like you play it a couple times. If you're co-op playing with your buddy, you play it, but you can only jump in the air and do a circle so many times. Like it was a novelty. It's not, you can't do a dynasty mode with it. You can't road to glory because everyone looks the same. It was literally just a fun mode that, for the most part, you could just play in 14 still, minus the 9 new schools that are in the game. So people will miss it, and I understand that, but I will not think of it twice. At no point when I play this new game, hours and hours into it, I'm like, man, I'm bored of it now, but I wouldn't be if mascot mode was in it. Like that's not gonna cross my mind. So like, I'd love to see it back this year, next year. So, surprise this year, DLC, or wait till 26. I want to see it, but it in no way impacts my enjoyment of this year's title.
Do you think that if they didn't confirm whether it's in the game or not, knowing how many people have talked about it, do you think that gives a little more confidence that it is in the game? I feel
That
like
gives me
that's
the 10% because like nobody, like Matt Brown of all people, would be the one to, like, he's asked and he has not gotten a concrete answer, but like there's no reason to assume otherwise right now. So again, that's why I'm giving it the 10%. It could be like we're messing with it. If it doesn't look right, we won't do it. If it does, we'll throw it in there. Who knows? So
You know
it's
what?
not confirmed.
Yeah, that leads me to believe that maybe it's a little different from the mascot mode that we are used to. That could be
Mhm.
the case too. Maybe it
Yeah.
is like a mini game and not an actual NFL, or, a
I would
college
love
football
I
game.
would love like a 7v7 with the mascots. Like that's
Yeah.
fine. It's like if it's easier to program that way because like
hmm
the linemen and stuff, just take them out other than the center maybe, which you kind of have that with the yard. Like if you made the yard mascot mode, cool. I'm all for that.
Me
That'd be,
too.
and the template for that is already made through Madden, of course, which wouldn't make it a reskin. It's just the point of it's already exists in your wheelhouse. Just throw the mascot models on the players instead. So that's
Yeah. If
all
there's,
the quote unquote
I was
negatives so
right.
far. Yeah.
I was gonna say if there's any, they've brought in a lot of for folks that are watching, and are starting to come to this conclusion. I understand. They brought in a lot of great developers from outside EA and inside EA, like YouTube commentators and stuff like that. But clearly, they missed two guys that could give them a little extra creativity for their game this year. Maybe next year they can
Yeah, I mean,
brainstorm
I live when I heard about that Orlando event. I'm like, man, it's Maitland, so it's like 20 minutes out of Orlando. That's like 90 minutes from me. I could have just like you didn't have to pay my way down or anything. I would have just showed up. So
Right.
maybe next year, like you said.
That's right.
So that is all that I had about like the quote unquote negatives. Is there any other things that like your initial opinion was negative when you learned about it or saw it in the trailer? Is that kind of all of it?
Um, I, I I feel like the people that are complaining about how the game looks and runs, like how the players run and move and stuff like that, it is drastically overstated.
Yes.
About how it is a Madden reskin to a certain degree, but I do believe they have a tiny point because I've had an issue for the last 4 or 5 years about the movement of players running. It does
Mhm.
feel a little robotic to me. Like old Maddens, I felt did a better job of making it look more realistic, like making the shoulders move a little bit more, having
Yeah.
guys kind of move up and down a little bit because nobody runs straight up like this,
Yeah, the Eric Dickerson run where you could have a glass of water on your head and
Yep.
it won't move when you. Yeah, other than him, no one else is supposed to be able to run like that.
I do feel like they did a better job and they talked about speeding it up 30%,
Yep.
but I still, looking at the trailer, felt that there's still a little bit of that robotic movement to
Yeah.
it. And listen, I'm just a random kid, in California. They are doing I mean, literally like booklets of code just to
Yeah.
create each individual thing. So who am I to say that they messed up here? But I do feel like they could get a little more realistic in that regard. And I think, like we've said, we're happy for it to be back and for us to expect everything in year one. Even to the most critical, I think would agree that expecting everything back in year one was a pipe dream. I mean, that's
Yeah.
crazy.
I mean, there's gonna be people that do expect that, but for those that live on the real world and planet Earth here, like we
Yeah.
didn't expect that, and we
Hmm.
knew there was gonna be new things. They were gonna go about things a different way. When they dropped that first teaser trailer, not the gameplay deep dive, but just the hey, this game does exist and it is coming on this day. Like when we got the release date, there was the clip of Milrow getting sacked by the Georgia player.
With Welcome to the Jungle
Welcome
playing
to
in
the
the
Jungle playing.
background.
That sack animation, I'm like, that is in Madden. I have seen that a million times
Yep.
in Madden. And it's
Hmm.
not a shock to know that some animations will carry over. They've made other animations. It's going to be like double the animation pool, which is good. But the second I saw that, I'm like, the limited that I've seen Madden this year, well, or I've played like 2 years worth of franchise of Madden this year. That's been my take on it. So I've seen enough of it to know that like, and I even sent you guys a clip. Like I had this really cool like swing pass for a touchdown, and I'm like, when Madden wants to, when all the animations make sense and click at the right time, I'm like, it makes for some really cool gameplay. Just
Yeah.
doesn't
No.
happen enough, which hopefully it does in this. And then when the gameplay one dropped, and the first thing you see is Ollie Gordon hitting a spin move for Oklahoma State and scoring a touchdown. And then the next play is that Kansas running back like hurdling the guy. He didn't go
Yeah.
anywhere. He only gained like 2 yards out of doing it. But the hurt like those immediately like those are new. This clearly
Hmm.
looks running faster. The running animation seems a little looser. So in the we've seen a total of 5 minutes worth of movement for this game, and you can already tell it's different for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure. And then they had the throwing motion of the Tennessee quarterback, and then they had a couple other throwing motions there. I thought were very cool. As mentioned, the one-legged sideline catch, just having that in,
Yeah.
which
Mhm.
wasn't in 14 to my knowledge, what
Not
are great,
really like
great
the
additions.
yeah, like the 2 foot catch would only like if only one of them went down, it counted as a catch, but they didn't have really specific toe drag animations like you're saying.
Yeah,
So they kind
yeah.
of shortcutted that back then, but this we won't have that problem
Mhm.
here.
Right.
To me, the biggest positive, like because that's why I wanted to get the negative stuff out of the first half. The biggest
Cool, cool.
positive I see is, and they're talking about the wear and tear system. Now,
Oh yes,
this
yes.
could be a nightmare, as it has been in Madden, where if you run your starting running back 5 times on the opening drive, you don't see him till like the third quarter because his stamina is so low. You have to go in
Yeah.
and manually tweak that. I actually had to show a coworker how to do that because he was in his online dynasty or online franchise and he's about to make the playoffs. He's like, none of my guys have the stamina to play. Like, what's the deal? So I had to show him how to like go into the settings and do that. But with this wear and tear, if it's done right, it'll make sense that you can't just run your 90 overall running back up the gut 47 times in a game because he ain't
Mhm.
going to last. You can't let your quarterback get hit. You have to slide. You have to get out of bounds. You have to throw
Unless
the
you're
ball
Derrick
away.
Henry.
Yeah. You have to throw the ball away with stuff. And you don't want the same receivers, tight ends getting hit every time. If this is done right, it's going to make it so that you actually have to have a good second running back. You have to have 4 to 5 wide receivers that you can relatively trust. It's really going to make your roster construction matter if this is done right. And we haven't seen enough of it to know yet, but we have seen the difference before was a guy was hurt or he wasn't. There was really no idea if he was close to getting hurt other than his stamina being low. Now it shows like his left ankle is yellow. So if he gets hit on the
Mhm.
right side, it's not affecting the left. It really reminds me of wrestling games where you can target a body part. Like if your submission
Yeah.
is an arm bar and you keep attacking that right arm, it's going to be much easier to make him tap out than otherwise. UFC games as well. Or if you want to knock him out with a head kick, the more damage taken to the head, it's going to be easier to knock him out the head kick. And they almost pulled a little bit of that with this wear and tear. And if done right, it's really going to change how we play and how we construct our roster and who we need and who we don't. So that to me, that's the biggest gameplay element that we're gonna have to fingers crossed works the way it's intended. Because Madden, whenever they try to talk stamina and substitutions, haven't really hit the mark in recent years. So hopefully this one does.
Yeah, shout out to the YouTuber that you were talking about earlier. Would fail every class and
Yeah.
see, or get D minuses and see if he can still play. That same YouTuber, we're calling you, please. If your running back gets a concussion, have him run the ball again with his head ducked down right into the middle of the hole, and let's see
Right.
how long he lasts and what happens. Is he going to be on the field motionless in a couple of minutes?
Hmm.
So I think this is really cool. And not to mention, in the middle of that wear and tear thing, I'm sure we're going to get to it as well. They had a sneak peek of the menu, the play screen menu, and I want to say they had wear and tear somewhere around there. But even if they
Yeah, like
didn't,
the top right.
just the accessibility to all the different settings right there on the menu is
Mhm.
amazing. And I think that's going to be a great addition to where, before in Madden, you'll have oh, this guy kind of bruised his sternum, re-injury risk, medium,
Yep.
whatever.
Yeah,
Do
pretty
you
vague.
keep him
Pretty
in or
vague
do you
stuff.
bring him out and there's nothing else there? And it's like halfway in the right direction, but yeah, like you said, it'd be nice to have a body picture and to see, oh wow, not just his sternum, but yeah, his ankle is twisted, or he's a yellow here, he's a red there, and
Mhm.
and stuff like that, and make your judgment call.
Some of the other big things I saw, because this was not a thing in 14, and it's somewhat been a thing in Madden, but again, this is them doing it right. When you do Dynasty, you have control over your offense and defensive coordinators now. You can hire them and fire them. They can move to a new job. If they move to a new job, there is a chance that some of your, if you are at San Diego State and your OC takes the San Jose State job, there is a chance that running back that you didn't play enough transfers to that particular school to be with that OC or DC, or anything like that. So that is another element that you could possibly see that I'm looking forward to it. While the transfer portal was in 14, it was archaic. It was a dinosaur compared to, you didn't control if you got anybody. You just got transfer requests and you hit yes or no. That was
Yeah.
about it. So like it was, it existed in name almost only. So this will be much better. I'm really interested to see how the transfer portal affects everything. They can't make it the way it is in real life because that just wouldn't be fun. Like, so they're gonna have to make a way to like it matters, but it doesn't monopolize everything you're doing in the game.
Yeah. Did they talk about having like players you would pay, and like do you negotiate salaries on that, or
So the
uh
NIL isn't really in Dynasty. It is more. They don't use the term NIL. They use like brand prestige. So basically, the higher
oh,
your prestige is, the more general money you would in turn have for these players. But you're not physically like putting up a number scale on the screen or anything, which
gotcha.
I wouldn't particularly want to do. I understand that's very much how it is in some places now, but it's not everywhere. So it would be hard to like, yeah, you can do it at Texas, but you're not going to do it at Texas State. So like, why are we pretending that these schools operate the same?
Yeah. Yeah, and to a certain extent, you want it to be deep, but you also don't want it to be so incredibly time consuming to worry about every little individual factor.
Right.
And
Like
then they
when
can
you
cause them problem anyways.
when you play MLB the Show, like that gets as tedious as you want it to be, and some people might love that. But it's sometimes like I just want to get on the diamond. So it really affects how much you want to do. And it could be like in the show where like how much control do you want? Do you want to just be the coach? Do you want to be the coach and the AD? Like, is there two different versions? And some of this is auto done. Madden has a little bit of that. Like, you can have a salary cap guy, or you can be the one that's managing that. It's kind of up to
Yeah,
you.
that is
So
true.
they should give you as long or as short of a leash as you want to enjoy the game. I think is how that needs
Hmm.
to go. We feel like we know a good amount about this game, way more than we did even like 2 months ago, obviously. But is there any basic thing that you still feel like I don't have information on this and would want to? What's your biggest question that you still have?
Well, I'm going to answer it with a double here. There's
Okay.
two things. One, the presentation of it, not necessarily the looks, and the elements like Clemson walking out with the Howard Rock, they all
Yeah.
touch, and Notre Dame slapping the sign and all those other things. But in general, like I can picture now how, every game loads with college football 14, where they show like a high shot of the stadium, then they'll show like the coaches walking around and stuff like that. Ironically, that is the one area where 14 I felt was kind of boring. Like the introduction to the game was pretty bare bones. And I am curious how 25 goes there. And then the second thing is recruiting. They didn't even touch on that yet. So as soon as
Right.
we know, it'd be great to see. Does it look a lot like 14? Are there added elements? Are there reduced elements? That'll be great to see. Like in terms of the recruiting and then like the coaching trees too. I thought was a fun addition to 14.
Yeah, I think if like, how would I put this? So we had the gameplay deep dive. I imagine the next video we get will be either the Dynasty deep dive or the Road to Glory deep dive. I hope they don't just smush them together because there's enough to talk about each of them
Yeah.
separately. So hopefully, yeah, in the Dynasty deep dive, you'll get a little bit of the recruiting talk or whatever. Um, my biggest thing, and it's really a niche thing, but I did attempt to read because Matt Brown like lets you send in questions and he ultimately tries to get back to you. And again, this is a very niche thing, but I did enjoy it a little bit in the old game. And about the presentation, real quick too. Like, I thought it was decent for its time, but yeah, when you play it for 11 years, it's going to get old. It's not going to be as
Fair point.
well. Like if you put yourself in 2013 mind frame, you're like, oh, this looks great on my PS3. So I'll give it a little bit of help there. But my question was for Road to Glory. You used to have the option. You can create your player as always, but if you wanted to be a existing player, you had that option. You know what I mean? So like if I want to be Shadur Sanders or Travis Hunter in a Road to Glory style, do I have that option or do I have to create my player? Which is a very niche thing, I understand, but I'm just people would
I
want
would
to
be
do that.
shocked if they didn't have that in there. I
Yeah.
mean, but you never know.
I mean, to bring it back to FIFA career, like I can make a guy or I can be, if I want to be Messi, if I want to be Mario Balotelli, which I'm doing right now on FIFA, like you have that option. So I'm thinking, because again, that's an EA made thing. With Madden currently, the career mode, I don't think used to be able to do that because I did a Shaquem Griffin one, but this past year you had to make the guy from scratch. So we'll see which direction they go for that for sure.
Interesting.
That's my biggest like. There's the basic like how is Road to Glory Day going to go? How is the recruiting going to go in Dynasty? But like as just a feature thing, that is something I'm curious about.
Oh yeah. And you want to know what's funny? We went 42 minutes, not 1 second of Ultimate Team. We as a community have had enough of that through Madden.
Yep.
But shout out to the 1%ers out there on all these boards that say, actually, Ultimate Team will be the first thing I play.
Yeah.
I don't know where they come from. I don't know what alien ship they came down to Earth in, but it's not. They're not from here.
It's like the same people. I imagine the people that play Ultimate Team first are the same people that keep like Long John Silver's in business. Just those obscure places. Like, who is this for? It's probably one of them. I will say this because I've listened to a comically amount of podcasts from the people that did go to the event in Maitland and everything, and they all at one point said there was not
We're
a
so
word
glad Phil isn't
spoken.
here. Is that what they said?
That's it. I'm sure they said that off camera, but like,
okay, fair.
They did say like we did not hear a lick about Ultimate Team. Like they mentioned, like it was on the menu, but like they didn't have to sit through a presentation about it. They didn't have to, it was never like something they were asked to demo and give notes. Like it's there, but they could care less, and apparently so can the devs.
I have one amazing idea that college football I hope implements at some point. I love in Madden 10 was the last time they did this, have an NFL greats roster. If they had a college football greats roster with, bring in Tim Tebow and these other guys, you can just sign them into different schools. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Maybe they decide that's something we can do an Ultimate Team like how Madden's done it recently.
Probably. Yeah.
Which would be a bit of a bummer, but shoot, man, some of us are paying extra for the deluxe edition pre-order of the 2 games. Give us a little, let us sign a couple of fun, legendary guys. I'm sure college would be easier. Give us that extra, nostalgic feel of the old great football players.
I mean, to buy the deluxe version, which I plan to, it's like $30 more when it's just the one game. I'm basically paying $10 a day to get it 3 days early, which I've come to terms with. I'm fine with that.
Oh my!
There will be Ultimate Team crap that I'll eventually like when I pre-order the show. Like I get Diamond Dynasty stuff. I do open the cards, but I very rarely do anything with it after the fact. We did leave out one glaring negative, and this probably is the only one that's a big deal to people. And this one I totally agree with, but I'm not ready to like burn the house down based on what happened in Madden. While you can cross-gen play your friends, there was no cross-gen in Dynasty yet. So if, like me and you have PlayStation, Hank plans to get a PlayStation. I got friends that I also have friends that have Xbox. They unfortunately cannot join our Dynasty as of yet. But this was the first year Madden had cross-gen franchise. So I don't think it's too far behind. It might even come in an update. But if we go the whole year without that, that is something that people are going to wish they have. You can cross-gen just play now, people, and Ultimate Team and crap. But the Dynasty part, you can have the 32 people in a Dynasty, which makes sense. They're probably using the online franchise Madden server for that. That's where the number 32 would come for sure.
Yeah.
But if you have 32 friends to play with, God bless you, because I'm lucky if we can get like 10. So that's the goal. If we can get around 10, I'm good with ours. But so that is no doubt a negative, but I feel like that's something that will be fixed in the future.
Oh, I mean, if it's not fixed, I'd be totally surprised.
Yeah.
If College Football 25 couldn't get to the point where they have the college game day staff in there too,
Yeah.
I think it is safe to say that if they implemented crossplay without having enough time to do that, then they probably would have had a very buggy, glitchy system. Give me a year off of that instead of having a thing where I'm super excited, but by next year, College Football 26, I'll be like, I don't want to play with friends, or I'm going to wait until it's proven that it works. Quick side note, because we haven't talked about it in the positive section. I think we're on that right now, right?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Multiple announcing teams.
Yes.
Great addition to the game. Thank you for finally listening to us and having multiple voices in there. We need that.
Mm-hmm. I agree. That's something that we will. It's the little thing like that that's going to feel that emergent. If you're LSU versus Georgia and the team is different than Troy versus Louisiana Lafayette, like that makes sense to me. There's the back in the day, and they should have this like the dynamic crowds, right? Like if your team is
they said they're going to have that in this game too.
So all that sort of stuff is just going to feel that much more immersive too with this. And we just live in a different age. Yeah.
They picked two great announcing teams. They didn't pick Gus Johnson again, whatever.
Unfortunately, that's a negative. There's nothing positive about no Gus Johnson for sure, but who knows? Maybe in the future. But no, back to the online thing for a minute. Like there are, I don't know, like I play, I have a Switch too. I'll play indie games. I play like certain things, but like the second a game, like, oh, this looks like a cool little indie game for $20, and all the comments are like, does it have online? And it's like, I don't even know where you would implement it online. You could have a leaderboard for a high score, but like, I like being able to play my friends online in sports games, but that's like the fourth or fifth thing I'm going to do. Like, I would much rather do my single player dynasty modes. Couch co-op is a must, of course. You need to be able to sit next to the person and play the game against. I remember when we used to do that back in the day. So like, yes, online is important, but like, again, like you said, if it takes a year to get that right, they had to give you some sort of online or it would just totally get shit on. So like the fact that you can get online dynasty rock and rolling already, and then the cross-play play now games, like that's a solid start. I'm not going to beat them up on that. Like I said, if it's not ready, don't give it to us yet, which is fine. Like if it takes a whole nother year to straighten that out, perfect.
You want to know why we can't have nice things anymore? It's because of people like that are going, oh my gosh, where's this and that feature in a brand new game? And I think we're getting a little bit of that syndrome with everything, with these Madden and college football games, where it's like, dude, if it gives us 80% of what we want, I mean,
that's
take the win and run, dude. Yeah. Take it and run. And that's what we're trying to say here. You complain enough, man, and college football is going to be like, dude, I'm tired of these a million demands that kind of contradict each other. We're just going to do it our own way. So
MLB The Show 23, everybody really liked, and then 24 came out, and they were like, it's the same game. I'm like, yeah, because the game is good. There's only so much to change. They've given you everything you could want. The one thing I want in MLB The Show that's not there yet, you can be AAA teams and AA teams. Give me my single A teams so I can play as the Tortugas. But as soon as you give me that, you've offered me everything you can for a baseball game. So they're that close already.
Yeah.
So it can only be so much more. And NBA, I don't play 2K as much as most people, but like it's clearly offers a lot with the new eras mode. I really enjoy. I was playing that a bit. So some of these games have gotten to the point where like, yeah, they're only going to be able to offer you so much more because they cover so much ground.
Yeah, Madden, there's a lot of ground to cover.
There's way more to cover.
In 2K, I have very small, like I wish it'd play a little bit better. It feels
Yeah.
like too often the computer just kind of sits at the top of the key for a long time. I know they got to fix that, but in general, very good. And with college football, what's cool is that to that point, they're giving us a lot, but there's also so much that they can add to it. So
Yeah.
college football 28, 29 should be absolutely perfect. But for now, I think this is an amazing. And look, we're not paid by EA. We're not,
No.
apologists of the game, not even close.
No.
We will be the first ones to come on here and bash it if it is worth bashing.
Right.
But I think if it is a bashable game, we would have seen signs by now. We're really not seeing any of that. We're just seeing a game that is terrific for the amount that they're able to give us. But there
Right.
are a few things they didn't bring to us quite yet, and I anticipate them bringing it in the future.
I agree. One thing with 2K, I used to not really be great at 2K, and then I got my wife an Xbox for Christmas, and 2K was on Game Pass. So let me try this. I haven't played it in a couple years, and I can't imagine I got better at the game by not playing it. So I feel like they dumbed it down a little for people like me, which I appreciate. Because like I would take a shot that I'm like, oh, that was a bad shot. I shouldn't take it, and then it goes in. So I'm like, okay, is it just
Oh,
easier to hit the greens these days? Like it must be, in my opinion, because I used
yes.
to not be flat out not good at it, and now I'm like, all right, at least I'm hitting my wide open shots. I'm hitting some contested shots. If they dumbed it down for people like me, I appreciate that for sure.
I loved playing the 2Ks from like a decade ago, and
Yeah.
those felt pretty fast.
Hmm.
To your point, maybe they kind of slowed it down a little bit, but in general, man, hey, once you master, Madden and stuff like that, those stick skills they can transfer to other games. So
Hmm.
don't sell yourself short.
So, do you have any closing comments so far? And I have one last surprise topic for maybe the last 5 minutes of this, unless you have anything
Love
else
it.
here.
Any other things to add? Um, hmm. I just say, one of the things I love doing is like, I'm a nerd, so I'm a huge fan of like the off season and behind the scenes stuff. Like I'll
Yep.
play the game, but I also love doing the hustle of the weekly recruiting and the off season additions, like coaching staffs, like
Yeah.
finalizing recruiting, and changing stuff, changing different things like roster wise and stuff like that, and creating schedules. What is cool is that they already implement the schedules from years in the future,
Hmm.
so that's already kind of finalized. Um, but
I'm
I
gonna.
do feel it's mostly accurate in 14, but there are some ways where it's like really like I'm 9 weeks into the season and nobody is signed here.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, so I do feel that there's room for improvement there, but if they could just copy and paste what they did in 14, I think they'll be fine. I think, unfortunately, what Madden has done, and the reason why we bring it up is because a certain percentage of the EA producers are over there, is
Yeah.
that in the last couple of years, they've brought back coaching trees and they've brought back mini games and these different things from old Maddens. And I still feel like how they did it in the past was better. Just copy
Yeah.
and paste that and tinker with it instead of trying to create something fancy and different.
Right.
And I hope college football doesn't do that with the recruiting and the other, features. The less you tinker with it, the better. And I think a lot of people feel the same way.
For sure. When Nick says that at times he enjoys the recruiting more than the actual gameplay of any of these games, I have a story that I don't think I've ever gotten to tell, but I'm really glad I finally get to tell it. In
Oh,
the
cool.
summer of 16, when me and Nick lived together, we were going to attempt to see a story. It was going to go on one of our YouTubes, probably his because he had more followers. But like we were going to do a Jason Street Road to Glory if he didn't
I
get, which
remember
is
that.
from Friday Night Lights. If he
Yeah.
didn't get paralyzed and had he made it to Notre Dame, we were going to do that story, and we were starting to record the gameplay for it. And in between the weeks, Nick was still doing the recruiting. I'm like, Nick, we don't need this. We're not going to show any of this. It
I
doesn't matter.
remember that.
We're doing
Oh,
Road to Glory. He's like, yeah, but this is a 5-star linebacker. I'm like, we're never going to get this. This is a one-season thing. We're never going to
yeah,
get.
yeah.
And he still took the time to do it. So that is proof how much he likes that in-between stuff. So
And that
he's
is
not
proof
exaggerating when he said that at all.
that is proof that your memory is way better than mine, dude. I would have went my whole life not remembering that. That was
Hey, you never know. With this new game, maybe we finally bring Jason Street to life with this new Road to Glory. We'll see how that
it's
works
not
out.
maybe. It's happening. You know
Okay,
what?
all
It
right.
is
You heard
happening.
it here first.
They too.
So that is 55 minutes here on College Football 25. We could do probably 55 more, and we will do 55 more in the next episode, I imagine. But I do want to take 5-10 minutes here at the end to talk about a game that I have been somewhat linked with for the past couple years. Maximum Football, we can agree, missed their window. Like, their game is still coming out, but it's going to come out after College Football 25 now. And granted,
after Madden.
And after Madden, this is a free game, so it's still going to get some people curiosity at least. I have gotten to test play this game a handful of times in this development cycle, and last week, 2 weeks ago now, I actually got to do it again with I don't know if it's the latest build, but it's the latest build that's been out. And while I can't give leaks or record stuff,
Okay, Matt Brown.
Probably wasn't even supposed to do this, but I did get Nick on FaceTime, and I played it, and he got to see some of it. Allegedly, may have happened. And again, like, yes, could you leak everything? But much like Matt Brown says, like, is it worth ruining your relationship with a game company? No, it's not. So, like, I played like a game or two, and Nick just watched it just so we could talk about what we saw. So, as someone who played the game, I will give my opinions. But Nick, based on what you saw, what was your opinion of the latest Maximum Football build?
Well, allegedly, I also had Maximum Football 2020 on my PS5, and I watched it and saw the difference. Mm-hmm. And there was a lot of improvement to be had, and credit to them. They clearly have made a huge jump in 4 years. It looks much sharper, much more smooth. And we are rooting for an indie game to come up and to challenge Madden and to just make them uncomfortable and create a different outlet. Because no matter how much Madden cares, they are going to have blind spots that other games could take advantage. So it's great to have this opportunity, and I encourage anyone, to bring in the game to play it, because first of all, it's free. What's the excuse? And second of all, it has that feel of professional and feel of college too.
It has both modes. Really cool. Yeah, it has both modes. When I played it, there were moments that it reminded me of 20 and 19, and we can agree those games were good intentioned, but not, they didn't hit the mark really at all. They hit the board a few times, but nowhere near the mark, right? There were points in the middle of the game that it hit the mark for me. Like, I'd play as all the teams. They're not real teams, but they're all the real locations for school. So I played what would have been Florida State. It was like Upper Florida Warriors, right? Yeah. And they had the Jordan Travis-esque character. And playing with a running quarterback and playing with a not running quarterback, you felt the difference. Like, you felt you had the freedom to break out of the pocket when you had that Jordan Travis-like character. And then I played as, like, the Penn State-like team with a pocket passer. And you felt like you could put the ball anywhere, but you were not getting out of that pocket. Running backs, I played as the UCF team. The Space Coast something they were, which I appreciated that. And the running back, the RJ Harvey like running back, like, I felt like I could make something happen. I played it as a random team with a average running back. I had to get lucky with my blocks to get it there. So there are the comparisons from 20 to this are leaps and bounds. I wish this came out when it was supposed to. We'd been playing it now. It would have been the perfect holdover for College Football 25. I still plan to do something with it. I want to create a fictional team and everything like that. But I did feel that I should mention that, much like with College Football 25, they were like, oh, this game's never coming out. They are now starting to get that sort of treatment from the internet. And they have put out stuff recently that their new goal is to have it out this year. So, thinking late, maybe Black Friday-ish time. I don't know. But I do appreciate still getting to, because when this game was made originally, the 19 and 20, the ones that weren't that great, it's the only thing I've ever given money to on a Patreon, because I'm like, I believe that we need this in the marketplace. Yep. And there was, 3 out of 10 times it played the way you wanted it to play, right? Which is a very low number. I'll give this like a 7.5 out of 8 times it plays the way you want. And this isn't even the final build either. There was this weird glitch that if you went for 2, it gave you the ball back for some reason on this build. So they had to send an email like, hey, we fixed that. You can play a normal game again. So you could basically score 16 points in one drive. because it would
Oh
put you back at
man,
first
that's
seed. So that
awesome.
was funny, but that obviously wouldn't have made the final game anyway. But it was,
Yeah.
it was kind of funny that happened. But from what I saw, like what these guys are doing, how it looks, it's a different feel. It's a little more, they obviously don't have the pageantry because these are all fictional teams. It's a little
Mhm.
more like grungy. So for people that want to like make a high school league or make a fictional, you know, dream season league with fake teams and like think like All Pro Football 2K8. It's kind of in that vein of that, I would say. Not with the Hall of Fame
Yeah.
players, but you can have the Philadelphia Americans and the Miami Cyclones and all those random teams, but with college. So again, it's not Florida State, it's Upper Florida Warriors, right? It's not Penn State Nittany Lions was like the Silverbacks, and it was like this big gorilla, but like it had the same colors and everything. Some teams
Yeah.
had the same colors, some didn't. Like Florida State was completely different colors. But I just thought it was worth mentioning that like those guys are still chugging along, and I support anything that comes out, and we'll be sure to come on here and talk about that just as quickly as we will College Football 25 because they attempted to be in that space when we really needed them. So I'm not willing to give up on them now. Granted, they're owned by another company. The previous owners of Maximum Football are the ones you may have seen. I sent it to Nick and a couple other people. There is and this one's way farther down the line in development. It will take much longer to come out. There's a high school game in the works called Varsity Football,
Yeah, I have seen that.
made
Yeah.
by the previous developers of Maximum Football. Couple clips out there so far, not even like 11 on 11. It's just like quarterback and some receivers throwing the ball. But like, if we got a true high school game to play, like even if it's just like we'll play now, little season mode, like a very stripped, like that's what high school is meant to be. It's if that game is bare bones, like I'm still all over it. So
Oh yeah.
imagine if we actually have a high school game into it, not that it would transfer, but YouTube reasons you could have a high school career, a college career, and a pro career. That's the dream right there.
Hey, if it's got a recruiting mode, I'm all in. But yeah, like shout out to Maximum Football, man. Watching you play it and everything. Um, I don't think they'll be too bugged by me saying this, but uh, to me, the Maximum Football 2020 is comparable to, sharper graphics, obviously,
Yeah.
but to like Madden 99 or 2000 with the way it played. It felt pretty robotic.
Yes.
This one feels like maybe Madden 08, 09, where it's a lot more smooth. There's a lot more animations and it feels much, much, much more complete. And a lot of people actually prefer that game over, the newer stuff. And then not to mention the recruiting's gotten a huge boost. The different series modes have gotten a huge boost and stuff like that. And then the graphics are terrific. I mean, there's very little improvement to be made in terms of the sharpness of it and the different cutscenes, and they'll have stats and whatnot. It really does look like a much more professional game.
Mm-hmm.
And they're considering it's free. I mean, what is your excuse? There really is none.
Right. If you like football games at all, you have zero reason to not try this game out and give your
Yeah,
honest opinion. There's no reason not to.
yeah. So,
So,
and it's I believe it's much less size.
it
So
can only like when I downloaded this trial, which granted didn't have everything in it. Nick saw the recruiting in it too, which was pretty neat from what I could get into. It was maybe like 17 to 20 gigs, which is like a third of what a Madden or an NCAA would be, I would think.
yeah, and the Maximum Football 20, the like menu was kind of it felt very bare bones.
It
It's
looked
just a
like the
player.
Xbox. We're not Xbox people, but like how everything is in a square. It was kind of like
Yeah,
that, So
yeah, like the console menu of
yes, yeah,
Xbox.
exactly.
Just a random guy just standing there moving around, and then
Mhm.
there's like a couple of things you could do.
I mean, Madden has that now, so that I can't even say it's that
Yikes!
different. Hey, real
Yikes!
quick before we get out of here, who you picking in the finals for NBA?
I've been all week thinking Dallas because
Hmm.
Boston has dominated such a weak conference, and they'll
Yeah,
finally play. But and being a Laker guy,
yeah,
rooting against Boston is like Tuesday.
sure.
But you caught me in a really bad spot. But I actually am going to change my answer and go
Ooh,
Boston. And it
okay.
just feels gross to say that,
Yeah,
but I'm just thinking Boston has too much defense, and even though Dallas is a fun story and they got through a rigorous West, and I'm going to feel like, a pretty silly guy if Dallas, the offense overwhelms that Boston defense, but I just feel like the Celtics are too deep and too strong defensively where
Yeah.
Dallas is going to wear down, and yeah, they'll win, but either way, if this series goes 4 or 5, I'd be stunned. This should
Wow.
be a long series either way.
Oh, you're saying it should go longer, right? Yeah. No,
Yeah.
as weird it is for you to go with the Boston team, the Celtics specifically, being a Laker fan, I feel equally weird going for Dallas, but this team is
What?
special, and
Huh.
it's so strange for me to cheer for a Dallas team, but I feel like most Cowboys fans are Lakers fans anyway, so it's not the same type of fan base. But to me, it's just wild how good Kyrie can be when he's not being a knucklehead. Like, we have not heard any
Yeah.
negative things about him at all this year, and because of that, they're in the spot that they're in. So,
You want to know what's hilarious? LeBron's like, oh, damn it. I really wanted to play with Kyrie, and he's amazing. He's my favorite guy. And that's why I might pick Dallas to win. I was like, what?
way to
After
go out
all
on a
that?
limb there. Yeah.
Yeah. So to me, the fact that he even says that, being, and knowing as much about basketball as he does, apparently almost as much as JJ Redick, a story which
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll talk about next podcast.
Yeah.
Um,
But by the time we were on here again, because the word's out there, but by then he might be officially your new coach. So we'll be
Yeah.
sure to talk about
Yeah,
that if
it
and when
feels
that happens.
official.
It
Yeah,
does.
if it doesn't happen, that'd be
Yeah,
crazy.
unless
But
we've dropped a Woj bomb since we've been recording here, which I don't see one as of right now. No. So, but we'll have to talk about that next time then.
yeah.
Um,
To me, the fact that LeBron is hesitant to pick Dallas, that is my confidence that I think he knows Boston is a really good team. But
mhm.
either way, I hate to burst the bubble of anybody in those two, markets. This was a pretty weak field. I
It
think
was,
none of these
yeah.
teams compare to like some of the greats from like 5, 6, 7 years ago.
And they got lucky with some injuries too along the way.
Yeah.
Like, they didn't have to play Jimmy Butler, they didn't have to play Embiid. They missed the
Mhm.
Nuggets entirely. That's the West, but you know what I mean. Like,
Yeah.
that's how that worked out. But yeah, other than that, guys, appreciate you talking video games with us today. Be sure to leave some comments about what is a big deal to you that is or isn't in the game, and what you still like to know about it between now and July 16th. But until then, Nick, thanks as always, and we'll talk to you guys next time.